Thanks for joining us on Unsolicited Book Reviews with Michael MacBride. That's me. Today I'm joined by Richie Billing, all the way from Liverpool, England. So thanks so much for joining me, Richie. Richie reached out about his book, Together We Rise. And this is, I don't usually do books that people have sent me who are actually the authors. I usually read them from somebody else. But in this case, it seemed like a really great opportunity to kind of I wanted to pick his brain a bit and learn more about it. But welcome, Richie. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where you're from, what motivated you, what you're working on these days? So,
Thank you very much for having me, Michael. Great to be here, chatting with you tonight. So I probably got into writing about 10 years ago. Never really wanted to be a writer growing up. It's just something that I realized that I liked. And then when I tried it, fiction writing and creative writing, I just completely fell in love. And then since then, I've just been slogging away, and my life is big portion of my life is devoted to writing and creating things, and I just love it so much. I don't think I could ever stop. It's kind of just when I suppose it's like anyone who feels like they found the vocation in life, like the thing that they're meant to do. I mean, sometimes like with imposter syndrome and stuff, you don't feel like you should be doing it, and you've made a huge mistake. But it's something that you love, and even if a few people connect with it, or a specific story or a character, and it helps them in some way, then I think the whole exercise is worth it.
yeah, no,
Um,
I definitely hear that for sure. You're right. It's funny when something just kind of clicks with you, um, and then it feels strange when you don't write for a time. You know, like I'm in this weird lull where I'm kind of doing shorter projects, but I
mm,
haven't done long form fiction in a while, and I feel like I'm missing something. I long for that. So I
it's
definitely
weird to say that because I'm experiencing the same thing. Like
really.
I was halfway through editing a fantasy novel, and I just got really tired of it. Switched all completely to like short fiction and this novella, and I've probably for about 18 months I've just been doing nothing but shorter stuff. And in the last probably 2 months, I've started to wonder about a longer project. It's strange, isn't it? I think it's just you've got to go with it. That's weird as a writer. Like you don't really know the right course, but you have a bit of a gut instinct
Yeah, I'm
about which
fascinated
way
by
to go.
people's processes. You know, some authors insist like every day I have to sit down and write 1,000 words or whatever. I mean, obviously some authors like, Stephen King talks about going down to his office and spending the morning writing, and he has the luxury of like making lots of money writing, so he can do that for
Mm,
sure. And then, there's people like you and me where we have day jobs, and so you have to find your time. And I think it's important that like, at least for me, what I'm writing, I need to be passionate about it. It needs to feel like the thing that is most pressing. And
mm,
that does cause me to jump from project to project sometimes. So, I go between kind of nonfiction and fiction, and um, I don't know, it's kind of what feels the most important or the thing that I'm most interested in doing in that moment. So, I mean, I think
yeah.
you're right to chase the thing that speaks to you for whatever reason, whether that's short or long form. So, uh,
I think it's just kind of what you need at the time, and I, s- I suppose after one of the biggest challenges of writing a novel is that it takes a while, especially if you're doing it part time. And during that period, you're not talking to anybody else, you're not getting any feedback, and you can begin to wonder whether you can actually do uh, the crafts and whether you're even capable of writing a story that makes sense. So um, I think part of me was like, I need to start doing more shorter stuff to rebuild a bit of confidence and to get a bit more validation that I can actually do this. But I think going back to shorter fiction and focusing more on telling as much story with as little as possible. I love it. Like, I don't want to write a novel again because I've done Together We Rise for half the word count, and I feel like it's the characters there's enough there about the characters that you don't need to know anymore.
Yeah, you really
Um,
have to distill it down to its essence, I mean, and you learn kind of the parts that you can leave unsaid that that readers will fill in, or um, I can't remember. I think it was Ernest Hemingway talked a lot about the kind of iceberg approach to writing, right? And he wrote a lot
mm,
of short stories that are very sparse. And the idea was like what you read is just the tip of the iceberg above the waterline, and then under the water is the rest of the story that the reader isn't privy to, but they fill in. And there was an article I read once where he was talking about how he doesn't even like naming characters. And so a lot of his short
mm,
stories, it's like the old man or he or she, and they don't have, or the
mm,
girl. And because he said, like, the minute I name somebody Bill, you immediately fill in the gap of all the
mm,
Bills you've ever met in your life. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting to think about. And yet then other
mm.
authors, go the other extreme where they want to fill in all those pieces, probably to override all the Bills that you've known in your life and say, no, it's this one. This is what he looks like. This is, how he acts. And um, anyway, I'm curious, where do you find yourself on that spectrum? Are you, especially since you're talking about cutting away and going to short stories,
Yeah,
are you leaning more towards leaving more left unsaid?
I really love Hemingway's approach, because I like to involve the readers in the story as much as possible, and have them try and piece the little bit extra that they need together so that they can follow the story. I love that approach, and I do tend to lean more towards like the vagueness. I like characters to sort of they're sort of loosely defined, and then the person can connect with them in their own way. And like you say, fill in the gaps and they'll enrich themselves. And I really like that. But I do, when you think about some of like the main characters, like especially fancy characters, um, people absolutely like adore them. And sometimes it's because the author's gone into so much detail about what they look like or who they are, things they've done. Like The Name of the Wind, think have you ever read that series of books? But the main character in that, like people absolutely adore. And I think it's because it is just so it's like a devotion to that character basically and how they come to be who they are. So but yeah, there's all different approaches and that's the best thing about writing is that if we can sit here and we can say, oh, I do this and you do that, but like not we both might be wrong. There's no right way. I mean, you just gotta see what works for you. And like you say about process, it's good to hear how other writers do things because no one does it the same. And I was at an event on Thursday of last week, and it was a book launch for a new book called Writing the Magic, which is a series of essays on how to write fantasy by all different fantasy authors. Some of them really, really good authors, like R.J. Barker, stuff like that. And we had three authors on like a panel, and they were talking a lot about process, and no one did anything the same. And yeah, one guy was neurodivergent as well, so he was like his process was like utterly different, like completely different to everything anyone's ever done. So it just all comes down to you and what works for you, and a big part of becoming a writer is learning how to write in the way that you find most rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. It's gotta work for you, and I think it's funny though. Though I figured out kind of what works for me, I still am
Mm,
deeply fascinated by what works for other people. There was a
definitely,
book, and I can't remember what it was called. I'll have to look it up at some point. But it somebody just collected interviews or essays from authors who have talked about their process, and some of them were like, wake up at 6 a.m. every morning, go for a walk, think about what I want to write, come back from the walk, sit down, write for 45 minutes,
Mhm.
have a glass of champagne. Like it was this regimented process. And then others are, like, well, I fit it in when I can, or, after I work a long day, I come home and I'm physically exhausted, but my brain is engaged. And so, then they write from 9 p.m. until midnight or something. And it's just super interesting to me, the different processes. But um, you had mentioned though that you hadn't really wanted to write until like 10 years ago. I'm
Mm.
fascinated by this because usually you meet an author and they're like, "Oh my God, I always wrote stories. Like this was always a thing I wanted to do." Like, what called to you all of a sudden? Do you think, or what was that moment that brought you to the page?
I think I realized that I'd liked like having a writing project when I was in university. And then once that ended, I was kind of looking for something to do. And a friend and I, we started writing a sitcom. And that was a bit of a writing project as well. That sort of kept us busy. Not in came of it, but that came to an end as well. And I was just like, oh, what now? Like I need something. I was felt like something was missing. And at the same time, I was reading a lot of fantasy stories again. Like we were saying before we started recording, that like we just stopped reading books, just lose interest, and then all of a sudden we become addicted again. And that was what it was like for me. I was about 23 and started reading a lot of like classic epic fantasy, like Feist, um, James Barkley, um, Game of Thrones. Absolutely devoured them books. And I think it was George R. R. Martin's writing that I think sort of twigged something in me, and it was like what he was doing, like when I was reading it, I felt it was a bit magical, and like I would no book had ever done that, and I was like, this is amazing what he's done. Like I wish I could do something like that. And then I thought I'll just try my own stories, and once I started, then I stopped. Loved it.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. I started to tell you I didn't tell you this part, and I don't know if I've ever really publicly spoken about this, but in high school, in elementary school, K through 12, I was a terrible student. Like I did not, for whatever reason, I almost took it upon myself as a challenge to not read,
Yeah.
which I don't know what that was about because I read things for fun, but when it came to
Mm,
reading them for school, I unfortunately I found in the library this book that was probably taught. It was actually for, I've learned since then that it was for people who were studying for graduate level exams. And so it
mm,
had all of the, classic literature, and it had a detailed summary of those things. And so it listed all the characters and it gave them adjectives and it listed the plot points and it gave you like themes and all this stuff. And it was meant to be like, you've already read these, but here's a refresher kind of thing.
mm.
But as, like a ninth grader, I was like, great, I don't need to read the book because I have all the stuff here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but, and I probably didn't really read much until probably my mid 20s. And then I don't exactly know what happened, but somehow I started being re-engaged with books. And like you mentioned, it was, Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin. Um, I don't remember that spark for me, but there's that book that at some point speaks
Mm.
to you for whatever reason. Um, I
Yeah,
definitely,
everyone's got their own book, haven't they? And it's
yeah,
amazing how like you could ask 100 people and they'll probably say 100 different books.
I know you always get asked like, what's your, especially I'm sure you do as an author, you get asked like, what's your favorite book, and it's like, oh man, and I, I fortunately have one that I can go back to, which is my very favorite book is Don Quixote. And, it's an old book, it's a classic, but like every time I read it, I see something new and it's so
Mm.
weirdly inventive for like the 1600s. I mean, even now, the stuff that happens in that book is mind boggling. So, um, but otherwise, I'm like, well, I don't know. What did I read most recently that I'm interested in? And so this
Yeah,
nonfiction book, or it's this book by Frederick Bachman, or it's whatever. There's always something. It's lots of them vying for your attention, but
I know. It's no time to read them all, sadly.
yeah, so many books, so little time. But so Together We Rise. I'm curious. I want to know more about how this came about, because it's it is a beautiful melding, I think, of as like fantasy, but then also kind of philosophy. And I couldn't help but think of, and I don't know if you've read much, Frank Norris. He was somebody who is American 1890s, and he wrote a lot of things about labor union
Mm,
uprisings and kind of overthrowing the class, the upper class and that kind of thing. And I couldn't help but think about it because they're often kind of gritty, dirty books. And I wouldn't describe Together We Rise as that necessarily, but I mean, that's kind of this ramshackle group of people, fighting for their lives and livelihood. So anyway, I'm curious, like, what was kind of the inspiration for this? Where did it come from?
Great, that was very kind of you. I appreciate that. I actually use that on as a quote.
Feel free for sure.
Yeah. No, it's, I suppose, like a lot of people around the world, the last few years have been very frustrating. And it's hard not to feel a bit helpless and a bit despondent about what's going on. And there's not a lot you can really do on an individual level. Um, but being a writer, I just felt like I'd throw myself into it. I mean, I couldn't really think of anything else to write. It was consuming so much of my thoughts, and I was getting quite frustrated and uh, wound up by it. I needed some kind of release. So that's why I ended up ditching the novel, and then switched to writing this. And I'd already kind of mapped out this story as part of like an older novel. And um, it was my favorite part of that story. And I was like, oh, it's just sitting there doing nothing. So I was just like, oh, this is ideal. But I didn't want to go through, like we say, put the reader through all the build up to this revolution. Um, so I thought, let's just tell the story of what happens on the day and and tell the reader a bit of the background and the build up as you go along. So one thing I was keen to do is the reason why I was trying to vent essentially is to critique the system that we live in. And it's never been about like left wing or right wing politics. It's just about the experience that so many of us have, um, and just removing the bureaucracy and the sort of the uh, the smoke screens that thrown at us, and just focusing on the real issues because that's what unites us really. Like we're all experiencing the same thing, um, and showing it the impact of the system that we live in from different perspectives. I don't know if you've ever seen The Wire. Like
I haven't. I That's one
no,
of it's an appalling thing. I'm supposed to have watched it. So many people have told me I need to go back and do it, and I haven't. But it's perpetually on my list of things to watch. So
I'll tell you to watch it as well. Um, but yeah, The Wire, the best thing for me that's ever been created on TV. And the reason being is that it does more than tell a story. It critiques the war on drugs and the impact it has on society over a period of time, which is it's so accurate as well and explains so much about the state of the world that we're in now. Um, and the reason it was able to do that so well is because it brought in different perspectives. It showed the police officers, it showed the drug dealers, it showed the kids, it showed the journalists reporting on it. Um, so it showed the dock workers who were just trying to make a living when the economy is collapsing, and crime is growing. It's a really like powerfully done. And for me, the only way you can really critique something properly, like almost like academically, is to bring in these different perspectives. So that's why I wanted to introduce lots of different characters, but not confuse the reader completely. So the way it's done is that it's linear, it's nice and easy to follow. And I like to sort of say that each character is like part of a relay race. They hand the
I
baton to
like
the
it.
next character.
Pass it on. Sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you've read it, so did you get confused by it?
No, I thought it was great. I didn't. didn't realize it's interesting hearing you say that it was part of a bigger piece and you kind of carved it out. I didn't get
Mm.
that impression. I mean, to me, it just felt like a very well crafted, tight, and I wasn't sure whether it was novel, novella. I don't really get hung up in those things. If it's interesting, I'll read it. And I mean, this really hooked me from the beginning. The only thing that I kind of struggled with was I wasn't sure exactly how to pronounce the main the healer's name,
Oh yeah.
Dhjis or As.
I
So
just call him Dice. Dice.
Dice. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So
And
he's
that's
based on
fine.
a real person. He's called Thijs van Leer. He's the lead singer of a Dutch band called Focus.
Okay.
So if you've never heard of Focus, just go and listen to the song Hocus Pocus by Focus.
Gotcha.
And you'll have a great time because it's absolutely fantastic song. But they're a bit mad, and I went to see the band recently, and I met Thijs van Leer, and he is exactly like how Dice is described in the story. That is how he looks now. He's like 60, 70. And I just thought he just looked so cool, and the whole way about him. And that was probably when I was writing the novel all the way back then. So that's why he sort of got a little feature. So he's loosely based on a real person.
I love that. And it's funny to think about like where writers get their inspiration from. I mean, I love that you're like The Wire and books and George R. R. Martin and a Dutch band. Like
Yeah.
it's incredible. And it's I think I don't know. I'm always struck by the things that are around us, and sometimes I think people get stuck in this idea of there's only one place to draw inspiration from, but it's they pit TV against books. Like, well, one is bad and one is good. Like this is high art and this is low art, or
Mhm.
movies versus TV, and it's like it's all telling a story, and some do it better than others.
Yeah.
I personally, I know I will like The Wire from what everyone has told me, because I love when you really you get this muddied experience. It's like, whoa, okay, the war on drugs. Drugs are bad. Well, I don't know, and then like you really dig into like the impact on people living on the streets, the dock workers, it's the police, there's the government elements and the corruption, and
Mhm.
it just all there's so many complex elements to that story that, like you said, I don't think there's another way that you can realistically portray or critique that situation without really breaking it down, and letting everybody else kind of have a voice in there to kind of tell their element of that. Um,
Mm.
so anyway, I love that you're drawing from all of these different places, and the music thing was one that so when I write, I often create a soundtrack for whatever I'm writing. Usually it's a tight knit group of songs that I just listen on a loop that kind of disappear into the background at a certain point. But I often
Mm.
have a soundtrack, an official soundtrack to my books. And you literally took it a step further where every chapter has like a theme song or a motif for each of the characters and each kind of component of the book. Um, I'm kind of jealous I hadn't thought of that. So well done. And then I'm really curious to learn, like, are you also musically talented? Did you commission that with somebody, or how did those pieces come to be?
Well, it's quite lucky. One of the sort of benefits of the sort of fast growing technology is that all these new tools have become available for people to use. And I started messing around with one called UDO, and it was uh, sort of pitched as a music maker. You could like engineer your own music, and I love music. I listen to music all day, every day, pretty much. And I'm not good at instruments. I was strumming mandolin and get like a sort of I don't know how to play any song, can't sing. So music is not my forte, but I love it. And I love being able to sort of I like to think like when I listen to a song, I'd be like, oh no, they should have done that instead. Or they should have kept this going for longer. Um and so with this tool, it was a bit frustrating at first, but you've got to play around with it, get used to it, understand its capabilities. And then I produced a song and I was like, this doesn't sound too bad. And it kind of worked with one of the chapters in Together We Rise. And as I was listening and thinking about chapter, I was like starting to feel a little bit emotional, getting a bit of an emotional response from it. Like sort of like what you do when you watch Lord of the Rings. Like I absolutely love the soundtrack to Lord of the Rings as one example. And it sort of I don't know. It changes the dynamics, I think, having that music there as well. Um, and I was like, well, this has never been done. I mean, I've seen people make playlists, like you say, but in terms of like putting a soundtrack in a book, has never been done. That's as far as I could see. And it's partly because technology's so new. No one's going to commission like like an orchestra ready for a novella or something. So, um, and I was like, yeah, I don't mind. I mean, it was a bit of a gamble because people are so funny about AI and any kind of creative thing. But I was like, I genuinely think this will make the experience of readers at least different. But for some people who love music, it will make it better for them. And the idea of each song is it mirrors the emotional journey that the character goes through in the chapter. So there'll be highs, there'll be quiet parts, there'll be quite sad parts, and then there'll be like the big crescendos and big drums and violins and stuff like that. So um, once I realized I could do that, I was like, let's try it and see what happens. And so far, no one's complained about it. So everyone said it's good. So that can only be positive. What did you think of it though, as someone who's experienced this firsthand?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I've never so like the other people that I've seen that have had, playlists or whatever to play along with it, I don't know that anybody has essentially scored. I mean, yours are I would that's what I would describe it as. Like it's a score for the book. And the only thing that I wish I had thought to do beforehand was to play it and see if I could read the chapter in that amount of time. I don't think I
No,
could
you can't
because
do
most of them are
that.
only like 2 to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And so but that would be the only advice I have is if you could make it last the average
Longer.
duration of reading it, that would have been fantastic just to go the whole
Yeah.
length. But I loved it. I mean, I loved, like you said, I mean, there's really an emotional journey on the song. There's highs and lows. There's um, I don't know. I really, that was one of the things that really stood out to me. I mean, the minute that I looked at it and I saw there was a clickable link to play music, I was like, what? This is incredible. And then just kind of listening to the music and how it just kind of set the tone. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's one more tool, right? I mean, in
Yeah.
writing, you have words and you can format things and you can use italics and bold and whatever. And you went the step further where you're like, all right, I'm going to give you some sound for the background, that you can listen along to this. So I thought it worked well.
Thank you very much. I
I,
really appreciate
I,
that.
I did wonder if it was if you and I didn't think to look because you sent me a PDF of the book, so I didn't know if there's a print version, and if there's a print version,
Mhm.
do they have to go to YouTube or is there a flash drive in there? Like I was trying to picture like then that other piece of it, like how it functionally logistically works for print books.
Yeah.
But
Well, I thought long and hard about it as well, but I ended up settling on the simple QR code.
oh, okay, perfect.
So at the start of each chapter, there's a QR code scanner take you to YouTube, and you can listen as you read.
Um,
Um, but we're in the process of making an audio book version as well.
nice.
So I don't know if we're going to be able to factor in the soundtrack that way.
There,
But
there was a book I read. I could probably see it over there. It was by David Means. I can't remember the title. Oh, Hystopia. And
mm,
in his book, he mentions so many pieces of music. It's just, and it takes place in the late 60s, early 70s, and it's almost exclusively like American punk music. And so it's like they're driving in the car, this song's in the background, this song's referenced here and whatever. And I saw him at an event and I asked him with his audiobook, if you would ever consider like just having the music play in the background. And he was
Mm,
like, that would be amazing, but I have to pay royalties to musicians, and it becomes very expensive. Um, and so no, but there are other audiobooks like Dungeon Crawler Carl. Have you read any of those?
no.
I mean, the premise is it's aliens have come to the world, and there's kind of this post-apocalyptic thing where everybody is pushed into essentially a dungeon, like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And the aliens are playing this game where the humans have to navigate and they level up, and it makes a lot of fun of role-playing games as it goes. It's very tongue-in-cheek and kind of silly, but it has a heart. Anyway,
Mm.
the audiobooks, what he has done is, and I don't know how he can afford this. I mean, clearly he must have some big machine behind him because he has a full cast, different people voicing all the different characters, and there's lots of them.
Mm.
And there's all kinds of sound effects. And I mean, it's like a full production. It's really
Yeah.
incredible. So I could imagine in yours, if you have the audiobook, you could totally have and I'm just going to call it the score. You could totally have the score running under each one of those sections. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know. I think that would add to that experience. It'd be really interesting. Is that what you're trying, or what are your thoughts on it?
I need to chat with the narrator and see what
Yeah.
he thinks and see whether he's comfortable. Because, like I say, it's for this store book, I've worked with a lot of different artists and editors and stuff like that. But I have used this intelligence element, and some people just aren't comfortable with it. Whereas, I mean, I'm not using it to write the story. It's like creating something for the experience of the reader. So
Yeah.
for me, that's okay. And it allows little minnows like me to offer something that like some big publishers could just walk in and just start doing as like sort of standard practice. But we've
Yeah.
got to try, haven't we? We've got to
Yeah.
try and do things.
Honestly, that's what I try to do with every book. Like I just do something different. Like if
Mm.
nothing else, it just I don't know. It's a new opportunity. You try something else. Sometimes it's a success. Sometimes not so much. It doesn't always work out. So I definitely look forward to that. I do probably ingest more audiobooks than anything right now because I can multitask, and listen while I am formatting something, or I'm mowing the lawn or whatever. And I still do very much enjoy the physical books as well. Often when I get an audiobook and listen to it, I'll also go to the library and pick up the physical book and look through it and
Nice.
see what I missed.
Yeah.
Because like yours has a gorgeous map at the beginning. I mean that's one of my very favorite things about fantasy is
Hmm.
like almost everybody includes a map, and they're all like just awesome. So and it looked like there was a credit to an artist for that. So like I'm kind
Yeah,
of
Jack
curious, like
Shepherd, yeah.
did you have a sketched out map that you're like, here, this is what it should look like? Or did you just kind of give them carte blanche? Did they read the Together We Rise and come up with their own map? Or what was that process like?
So the guy who did it was Jack Shepherd. So I was very fortunate actually because he's very, very good. He's done the maps for Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy book. And basically I queried him and told him what the book was about and what I was after because I wanted the city map. I had decided there to have an official looking city map that has been taken by the revolutionaries and sort of it's got all the plans and the notes all over it. So in the back of the book is the revolutionaries map, and at the front is the sort of official one. And he loved the project, and he got really into it, and like going into the detail of the city, like all the different streets and the different areas that like are named in the book. And the idea is that you can almost follow along and see where everything's happening and track the course of the uprising as you go. And it's the same, like you said, I love maps. I've always loved the map. I think it's very important because in fantasy, I mean, even in this kind of chaotic short story, but it's quite hard to track and follow where they are sometimes. So having that sort of visual element allows you to almost immerse yourself a bit deeper into the story. So yeah, I do love a map, and that's why I wanted to go to a bit of effort with it.
Yeah. No, it is not only is it just pretty to look at. I mean, I back here I have a folder that has like maps, and there's one that is Lord of the Rings that came in one of the limited edition. I tore it out because I was like, I need
Nice.
to have this out to look at it. I can't just have it in
Yeah,
a book.
nice, good
But
idea.
um, but yeah, it's I don't know. They allow you to navigate the world, but I mean, kind of like the music, it's yet another layer. It's another way to
Mm,
visualize the world that you're in. And I've always kind of thought, and I have not done maps myself, mainly because I don't know, my drawing isn't that great, and I haven't thought about connecting with anyone to make one. But um, I think I think it also shows the thoughtfulness of the author. Like, it's easy to be sloppy if you write a lot of words. If you have a novel that's 900 pages long, you're probably going to have a couple mistakes in there. And people will probably forgive you because it's so big and long and whatever. But if you have a map, it shows the thoughtfulness of like, all right, no, like I actually put the place here, and you can see this is approximately 1.4 miles to this place. Like
mm,
it kind of, I don't know, it kind of shows your hand as a creator, that it's not just haphazard, that there is an organizational system to it. And a lot of my organizational systems are like Excel spreadsheets, which are not very
yeah.
attractive to look at. Um, but I don't know. I've always kind of wondered about that, like if it's just a desire to show like, no, there's a plan, so much so that I'll show it
Mm.
to you as
But to be
well.
honest, these little details are the ones that we spend most time agonizing over. Like,
I'm
oh,
sure.
that's not how long does it take to walk a mile? What if it's
Right.
uphill?
And there's
Like
a lot of
these things.
movement in Together We Rise. I mean, like you said, I mean, it follows kind of linear, and you literally have these characters moving up and down and around and through alleys and gathering. I was thinking about each of the different characters, and um, I mean, when you talked about the wire, it made a lot of sense that maybe each one of these is a type or, a class or whatever almost of person. And, Dice being kind of the healer. Um, and, but an underground healer, like doing things, like he'd probably be generally seen as part of the establishment, I would think, because
Mm,
he's a doctor. Everybody needs him. Um, and so I was just kind of wondering, I guess, when you started to break down, and it sounded like kind of carving away the characters you were going to include in Together We Rise. How did you determine that, you're going to have Dice, Tilia,
yeah.
Zia, Vaso, and Medella? Like, it's kind of a core group of like six people, and there's
Mm.
extraneous characters, but how did you settle on those six?
I think when I decided I was going to do it, I wanted to tick certain perspectives off. So I was a child, worker, police, um, the drug dealer, for the economic perspective. I think it's quite interesting. Um, and there's certain characters who uh, were needed for the story, like structurally, but also play significant roles in the whole story as well. So Dice is the sort of he's Talia's main ally. I thought it was quite nice to start with him because obviously the healers they have to put people back together after they get sort of chewed up and spat out by cogs of the machine. So um, him and Leah are both quite important in showing the reader like this is the reality, this is a grim reality, this is everyday life, the struggle. People just get eaten up and there's no compassion or there's no hope, right? And then my Della, she was probably that chapter. If you read the novella, like chapter 8, which is the last one, it's like it gets the most fantasy-ish anyway. It's there's all of a sudden magic. which can be a bit jarring for some people, but for other people, they're like, oh, why didn't we get to this magic sooner? So you can't really win. But in terms of this, I wanted to sort of broaden the scope a bit more as the story's going on, because this this story is just one that is set in this world and is exploring this timeline of events. And I almost wanted it to be like chapter 8 is kicking down the door and showing you the real world. And then you can go off and explore. Uh, yeah, so that's why Migdala, Talia, and Dice, they're the sort of three sort of structurally important ones. And then the other ones are there to critique and offer perspective while still advancing the story.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. 'Cause you're right. I mean, you need counterpoints, right? Like there's kind of a balance. Like, all right, I'll show you this perspective, but here's another kind of look at that as well.
Mm,
I was going to ask you about the magic system because like that's I don't write fantasy, not because honestly it feels overwhelming to me.
mm,
And I have a deep love of fantasy. So like I and it seems like everyone has different approaches to magic systems. So you mentioned the critique, right? Like that's the common
mm,
critique, right? Either early in the book, there's an explanation of how magic works in this world, and it's established on, and somebody finds a book or whatever, or a tome that explains how the system works, or you have, a novice who comes to somebody as an apprentice, and they get taught, so that then the reader gets taught how the magic system works, and then
mm,
other ones take the approach of like it's just one more thing in the world, and so you just kind of encounter it and you try to make sense of it as you go along. And
mm,
then sometimes a critique of one towards the end of a book is like, well, this could have been used way back at the beginning that would have alleviated these problems, right? um,
mm,
but what I didn't feel myself pulled out of your story by the inclusion of it late, like you said, like in the final chapter. um, I don't know. It felt natural and organic, and I was curious. Like, as somebody who's read fantasy, I assume you must have had like some pull to like explain how magic works, or like did you write those chapters? Are they someplace off on a hard drive waiting for the right day for it to be shown?
yeah.
Or were you like, no, this just needs to be, this is just is, and I don't need to explain it.
I have got that sort of story down somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole theme of it is, I wanted to, I like the idea of it organically happening in the story. So Mike Della, she's seen this for the first time as well. She's never seen it. This is a revelation. This is a game changer, because the point of Mydella and the main bad guy Canterbury is they're agents of two opposing forces who are sort of like at war with each other. And it's almost like a shadow war. No one really sees what's going on, but the people get caught up in it a lot and without realizing. So, for example, Canterbury's taken over the city of Pietalos and is systematically destroying people's lives. They don't realize who's actually doing it and the why behind it. Um, but this is where the two clash, and the sort of the Cairo, they're constantly trying to gain a foothold so that they can spread their agenda, their evil sort of way of life. And the magpies, as I call them, they're trying to maintain a bit of balance and order. So they're constantly trying to foil their plots. Now the balance is starting to tip in the favor of the Dakara. The Magpies are getting, they've lost a few battles, and all of a sudden the Dakara have got magic again. So where the hell does this magic come from? Because magic used to exist and it was like lost, and it's only sort of being able to live on through like enchanted weapons and spell, and like armor and stuff like that. So it's like echoes of what once was. And anyone who knew anything about magic has long died out. There's hardly any books left anymore. it's very much a sort of mystical thing that exists in the world that no one really knows how to harness. And I love that because for me, that's magic. Like if you start going down like the Brandon Sanderson route and defining the limitations and how and when you can use it, it's like more of a science.
Yeah.
And like it's not magical to me anymore. Um, so that's why I wanted to keep it a little bit vague, but keep done in a sort of natural and organic way that my Della's seeing it for the first time. She's only heard of it in like stories from ancient times and seeing the old weapon that's being enchanted. And then in the novel that I would mention that I abandoned before, it actually follows on from Together We Ride, and you see a lot more. The story continues, and you see this balance beginning to tip even further. The Takara go even even greater extremes, and the magic is more powerful. Um, and the threat is a lot bigger. And again, this is a shadow, like with the result of a shadow war. Like people don't know what's been going on, and then they just uncover it all, and the stakes are just massively raised. But the scope is massively broadened for the reader as well, because I don't know if you've ever read a book and you always wonder, I wonder where this is going, and then all of a sudden it's like I don't know, like Raymond Feist was great for that. Like all of a sudden you'd be traveling back through time to the Big Bang and all that. And I'd be like, oh, how did we even get here?
For sure. So I'm trying to think of how to ask this question because um, I don't know. So like one of the great things for me about fantasy is um, or science fiction or any of those things, like it feels like it is a wonderful opportunity to get people to um, I don't know. I'm trying. That's probably not the best way, but essentially, like if you can forget about the current trappings of the world you live in and look at
Mm,
this other world, somehow it's almost a refreshing glimpse at the problems you face because they're not your problems or somebody else's problems. And my hope always with good fantasy or good science fiction is then you go, oh, I have learned something about myself in this or my world
yeah,
and enact the change, right? Because like you're right. I mean, the last God, I would even go back like I would say 6 years, 6, 7 years has felt rather helpless. And reading this was a reminder that there, regardless of whatever shadow wars are going on, and I think that is a universal, like not just in fantasy for sure. That there is hope still, that there are dices out there who are doing good work and there are people waiting. And the idea that, like there is power in many. Um, so I don't know.
that's like I say, I like the what you said there about like it comes down to the individuals, and that's one of the main things I want to get across in the story is that, especially with characters like Kishto, who has a big choice to make, and it's like that sort of battle. And we all have the sort of power to decide. Like in my country at the moment, it's crazy. Like there's so many people moving towards like far right ideologies, and it's like when it boils down to it, you've got the choice to believe this stuff that you're just seeing on Facebook, or you've got the choice, like the chance to question it, maybe get a different opinion, and make your own mind up when no one's doing it. And it's important to remind people, I think, that they do have that choice.
yeah. So there's more of the story, as you've said, and you're working on the audiobook. What writing has you compelled currently? Like, are you writing more of this? Are you had mentioned kind of writing shorter form things? Are there going to be short stories set in this world, or like what kind of things can we expect from you soon?
So, it's quite heavy going, isn't it? Writing about political revolution.
It is. You took out a big topic, you know, like
Mm, yeah. So I've sort of angled for more sort of lighter relief. I've just started a series like online. So about 12, 13 chapters in. Um, it's called The Breakaways. And it's about this crew of useless monster hunters. And they're trying to make their own way in this world that's overrun by monster hunters. And they used to be part of the most famous crew of all, who are treated like royalty. But these guys specifically were the lackeys, these were the bag carriers, and there's a reason why they're not the heroes. So they decided to break away and start their own crew. Um, they're not very good. There's always something going wrong, and it having like a nice dynamic of characters. I love the dialogue. I love messing around with like dialogue, just taking the mick out of each other and winding each other up. And so I'm just releasing that chapter a week on Patreon. Um, and my mind has already turned, like I think we said before, about uh wondering about novels. Because for the last 18 months I've just done shorter stuff. And I've been thinking, do I go back to that novel I abandoned? I've got no passion for really at the moment, or do I start something else? So I'm still very much up in the air about what to do next year. But it is going to be a longer project. I just don't know
cool.
what.
I'm curious at what kind of reactions have you had to Together We Rise? Like, is there have you been able to do events? I honestly, weirdly enough, like this year, my family and I visited Liverpool very briefly. We
No
did
way.
like a wild. I'd never been to the UK, so I was like, we need to remedy this. And my wife had wanted to go for a while. We have two kids now, 16 and 14, and so I was like, if we're going to UK, like I want to go everywhere. So we
Yeah.
went to we were in London for a couple days. We did Stonehenge. We went to Stratford upon Avon. We went to Bath. We went to Liverpool. We went to Canterbury. We went to like all the places that I could possibly think of. Even if we were there for just like a little bit, like I needed to see like
Yeah.
what I want to go back to. And
What
as a
did you
huge
think of Liverpool?
it was rainy when I was there, which I think is appropriate.
Classic.
And and there was some kind of like festival going on, which I love. I love like um, I love any of those kind of art kind of festivals. Like there were lots of tables set up, and there were crafts people who had things out. There was
Nice.
music in the streets, and of course, like as a music person, I couldn't not do any of the Beatles related things. I sat with
Mhm.
Eleanor Rigby on her bench, and it just was. It was really wonderful. It would be a place I would want to spend more time because, like, we were there for really. We got in at 4 p.m. and then we left at like 11 a.m. the next day. So like there wasn't a lot of
Mm.
time to do much of anything. Um, but I don't know. Living
Least you
there, do you?
came.
What's that?
Least you came.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll be back. But I'm curious. I'm curious what the literary world is like in Liverpool for you. Like, I know there are bookstores, obviously, but have you been able to do events and connect with people and readings and that kind of thing? Or
Yeah, I'm not majorly like one of them people who are like, oh, I'm gonna do a book launch. I did a book launch for Together We Rise, and that was in a nice old pub
mm,
in
perfect.
Liverpool. And yeah, that was quite good. There were about 30, 40 people. Um, I'm trying to get more people in Liverpool into writing. So I've just finished a round of creative writing classes with the council and the
Oh, wow.
libraries. So they would just be classes. People would come. I just teach them like my simplest way of telling a story and creating characters and whatnot. And I think we got like 35 people out of potential 40
Nice.
over a few weekends. So people seem really engaged. It's just it's I don't know what the obstacles are. I mean, everyone's got different obstacles. Like a lot of people don't feel like they can do it. A lot of people don't feel like probably imposter syndrome, things like that. People have got busy lives, looking after children, um, working 2 or 3 jobs, just exhausted. It's difficult, and when economic like sort of things take a downturn. People, especially at work class people like myself, we have to work more usually just to keep up. So energy levels get drained and free time goes as well. So hopefully things will turn around and we can develop it more. But it's not massive in Liverpool. I went to a book launch last, I mentioned that before. There was about 20, 30 people there for that, which was really great to see. And I suppose just keep trying to put events on, keep trying to encourage people. And the best thing about the internet and technology is now that, I mean, it's not too important to have stuff nearby.
Sure.
And especially in places like North America, where it's so sparsely populated and some of it, like I've got people in my Discord group who like I don't speak to people all week because I just live so far away. But I've got a writing group that I meet with every week. So you've got technology now bringing people together from all over the world, and it's great for writers. It really is because you can get feedback from people, which is one of the best ways to get better. To try and learn what you're not good at and how to get better at
It
those
it
sorts
it,
of
it
things.
is funny because like usually people talk about, writing being a solitary experience. Like, oh, you go into a dark corner and you write or whatever. And I mean, there's certainly some truth to that, but
Mm.
I have always thrived in a community or, even, and whenever I can, I try to get into collaborative writing, like putting together essay collections or, working with another writer to help. I don't know, like I feel like the writing I generally do in those situations is better because, well, one, I guess I want to live up to their expectations. I don't want to let them down. But then also, it's another perspective. It's a built-in beta reader for everything you do, which is like kind of wonderful. Um, but and I know for me, people always ask like, where do you find the time to write books? It's like it's important to me, so I make that time.
Mm.
I carve out a chunk of time to do that. And it's I think to your point, why people don't do it, I think it is this perceived impossibility. It's so big, how can I possibly do this? Well, like you start with a small thing, you start
I'll start
with,
with a novel.
yeah, don't start with a novel, start with something small and, just kind of see where it goes. You don't have to publish it, but the writing of it is, I mean, it's such a wonderful opportunity for reflection because I think for me, like when I write, you hit a wall at a certain point where you're like, oh, I don't really know what it was like in 1862. Well, I'll look up what 1862 looked like. Oh, I do a little research. Oh, wow, there was a really interesting event that happened here. And, you're off and running again because now you know that the Mississippi River rerouted itself that year or whatever. Like you learn something and then you've integrated it into your story. And often you pull pieces of your memory into your characters. They always ask you, is this character you? Well, like there's a piece of me in there. Like literally,
Yeah.
like I had to generate it somewhere. It's like, yeah, I remember there was this moment when I was 5 and I stepped on a hornet's nest. A hornet. Yep, that was me. But like, is the character me? No. But like, it's that. I don't know. Writing for me does so many things um, beyond just producing a book or a story.
Mm.
Even if it never saw the light of day, I would feel better having done it. So,
Mm.
um,
Yeah, like therapeutic almost.
yes, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I like it. Though.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we go, you mentioned a Patreon page. Do you have a web
I
page?
do.
Like, where can people find you? And I'll make sure to tag them down below. But
Yeah, yeah. So you can go to richiebilling.com, and that's got a lot of writing stuff on there, like writing guides and things like that. You can also find all the stuff on there to read. Little button in the menu there, take you to Patreon. But Patreon is the place to go if you want to check stuff out. You can buy basically, well, you can for a very low cost, you can subscribe and get access to everything. Novels and Together We Rise. You can download the ebooks and whatnot. There's all behind the scenes content on there as well, like audiobooks that I've been bold enough to record myself. They're only short story. So, but yeah, Patreon's the best place. I am on social media, but I'm not a big frequenter of it. I don't like posting. But yeah, you can get me on there. Just search my name. There's not many Richie Billings, especially Richie Billings who write fantasy, so you'll be all right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and I'll be sure, like I said, to link everything. And it was awesome connecting with you. I really appreciate it, Richie.
No, thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah.
Fantastic questions as well. Great chatting with you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about me at my webpage, michaelmacbride.com, or on most social media platforms with the same handle, at Michael MacBride. That's MacBride, like Mac and Bride. Let me know what you're listening to, or if you read one of these books, leave me a comment and let me know what you thought. Have a great day.